Hello, this is Sam Gerrans from samgerrans.com. Today is Thursday, October the 5th, 2023. And today the subject is, are you a dangerous conspiracy theorist? Now, what we're going to do is look at an article from one of the mainstream media. What's it called? Yeah, The Guardian. The Guardian, that's right. They're very invested in keeping you up to date with real truth, as I'm sure you've worked out. So anyway, what we're going to do is we're going to look at this article. I haven't read it. I can't stand reading it once. I'm definitely not going to read it twice, but I already know what it's going to say, pretty much. So we'll look at it together and unpick how it's trying to spin up your minds. Now, before we get into it, what do we mean by a conspiracy theorist? Well, a conspiracy theorist, I suppose, is somebody who's able to theorize that certain effects have orchestrated causes. Just like if you saw a chemical, if you've never seen a car before and you were hacking your way through the jungles of Borneo and you came across a Mercedes Benz, you might reasonably theorize that men had come together to create this thing and then place it there. But what the media wants you to do, or the people who own the media, what they want you to do is to accept the placement of this Mercedes Benz just as a phenomenon that has no cause, or that it's just happened by. I suppose it's a bit like the Big Bang Theory, isn't it, or evolution? These things just came together for no reason whatsoever. Being able to use your mind, being able to think about things and see, or at least to theorize causes. And of course, there is a certain amount of theorizing that goes on, because they're certainly not going to come out and tell you exactly what they're doing. Is a dangerous act now. Now, if it was really so crazy and really so wrong, why would they have to attack it? And also, if you think of it, the word conspiracy theory, it's kind of taken on this. I suppose the conclusions are baked into the cake of the accusation, that there's something implicitly wrong with having an opinion which I suppose diverges in some way from what's the opposite of a conspiracy theory, I suppose, is the official version. Well, the official version changes all the time. Now, I don't know what this article is going to say, what particular things it's going to put forward. I'm sure, I can guess that they'll have a couple of really crazy ones in there to sort of justify the rest of it. But let's have a look at it and see how we go. Escape from the rabbit hole. The conspiracy theorist who abandoned his dangerous beliefs. Now, that's interesting, isn't it? Those beliefs are dangerous. Whereas trusting the government, let's say, or trusting the real government, that's not dangerous. This would be the same government who told you to inject all kinds of dangerous things into your arm just a couple of years ago. It's the same government that's getting you involved in World War III at your expense and crashing your economies while it's doing it. But that's not dangerous. It's the same government which is participating in something which is visible to anybody with eyes in their head, which is a worldwide kind of policy of spraying the skies with, well, frankly, we don't know exactly what, but they're not going to tell you that they're doing it, but you can see it. But seeing it makes you, I suppose, a dangerous conspiracy theorist. Anyway, we'll see what these people who really care about us, the people who are crashing our economy, destroying our cultures, destroying our history, destroying our religions, destroying everything actually, but they really care about you, you see, and they're going to make sure that you have right thoughts. So let's see how this goes. Escape from the rabbit hole. Yes, well, here we go. For 15 years, Brent Lee spent hours each day consuming quote-unquote truther content online. He then logged off. Can he convince his former friends to question their worldview? So he's obviously repentant of his the time that he spent down the rabbit hole. I like the way they use the word truther. I mean, surely we should all be truthers in the sense of wanting to find the truth. But now truther has become a dirty word. It's interesting, isn't it? Anyway, who cares about any of that? Brent Lee struggles to explain why he used to believe that a cabal of evil satanic paedophiles was working to establish a new world order. He pauses, looks sheepish and says, I cringe at all this now. Now, what this is, of course, now, I don't know, is there a cabal of satanic paedophiles? I think you could make a very strong case in that direction. If you just take one, for example, Ted Heath, who took Britain in the 1970s when I was a small child into what was then known as the common market. He's known to be a paedophile and a murderer. That's just one case. So, you just look around you. But anyway, let's leave, the facts to one side for a moment. the fact is that what he is a kind of a bellwether. He's there as the archetypal repentant of somebody who used his own mind for a while. Obviously, he wasn't particularly strong-minded. Otherwise, he wouldn't have allowed himself to be corralled into being used now in this way. But anyway, we'll see what he's got to say for himself. For 15 years, Lee collected signs that the so-called Illuminati overlords were controlling global events. He convinced himself that secret societies were running banks, politics, banks, religious institutions, and the entertainment industry, and that most terrorist attacks were actually government-organized ritual sacrifices. I mean, let's leave aside whether one agrees or doesn't agree with any of this. What's the alternative? Well, I mean, let's just take, for example, ISIS and Al-Qaeda. It's common knowledge and open information that these were funded into existence by the CIA. This isn't a conspiracy theory. It's just information's out there. I mean, it was interesting, wasn't it, that ISIS, or they changed its name to something else, in all the time that it was setting up the caliphate, never once attacked Israel. I mean, just for example. But no, I mean, what you have to do as well when you're looking at this is consider what the alternative is. I mean, this may be a false dichotomy. It may be neither. But the alternative that they wish you to embrace is the idea that events just happen for no reason whatsoever. Good luck with that. He was also inclined to believe in UFOs and that Stanley Kubrick staged and directed the filming of the moon landing. Now, it's interesting that they put these two things together. I suppose thematically they could be said to go together, but there is no natural correlation between them. Let's leave the whole UFO thing to one side. The moon landings, the best description I ever heard of them is that it's an art project. I mean, as a grown-up, just sit down and look at the footage they've got of the moon landings and ask yourself if you really think this is real. Now, obviously they painted themselves into a bit of a corner with this one because they can't really go back. Because if they go back, they have to admit they weren't there, first time. Recently, of course, they somebody in the comments said a Nintendo. Yeah, the Indians put a Nintendo piece of CGI on the moon. But if you notice, this time around, that the stars are there. The stars are now there. And I couldn't quite work out, I mean, I watched all of 7 seconds of it, but I couldn't quite work out, maybe someone in the comments can explain it to me, who or what was filming this Nintendo thing supposedly landing on the moon. Anyway, if you believe it, happy you, happy you. I did notice that Modi looked rather embarrassed. I mean, many things he may be, but an idiot, I don't think he is. He saw satanic symbols in the London 2012 Olympic opening ceremony and spent most of his time discussing these theories with an online community of fellow believers. Now, they're believers, they're not researchers. No, they're just believers. They're people. And belief, of course, is something which isn't based in reality, supposedly. But in 2018, something shifted. I got a feeling there was going to be, some sort of, dramatic shift in here. Here we are. And he began to find the new wave of conspiracy theories increasingly implausible. I was sick of it. I felt I can't deal with hearing this anymore because it's no longer what I believe. So I just logged off the internet, he says. I'm not quite sure what that means, but the first part of it, I completely understand. I just can't deal with it. No, I mean, I would agree. If you look into what's really going on in the world, unless there's something very wrong with you, you'll find it pretty hard to stomach. I mean, you don't have to go very far off the plantation just to look at the numbers of people who were killed in the First World War and the Second World War, and just look into just some basic things of who really benefited from those wars, etc. Anyway, let's do a bit more. I don't know how much of this we can stand. Here we are. Yeah, there's a picture of what you're supposed to believe is going on. If you know anything about shadows, and also let's just look at the flag. It has a stick down the back of it. So here we are, Buzz Aldrin, lunar module pilot for Apollo 11 on the moon of 20th of July 1969. Conspiracists claim the footage was faked by Stanley Kubrick. I've no idea who shot that footage. Maybe it was Stanley Kubrick. He would be a logical person to ask, given that he'd made compelling space movies. But I mean, if you look at that footage, I think a lot of people now, I mean, I'm not appealing to a majority by any means, but it is true that many people understand that the so-called space landings, the moon landings were fake. Well, if we accept that they were fake, at what time then did they start telling the truth? And what would the motivation for that be? Amicable and articulate, Lee is disarmingly willing to admit that he got things spectacularly wrong. Well, I think to be able to admit that you got things spectacularly wrong is a great advantage in life. I think that it was one of the reasons why I started investigating these sorts of subjects in the first place. Not that I think that I'd got them spectacularly wrong particularly, but I just realised that things didn't add up. And it doesn't mean that every conspiracy theory so-called is worthy of attention. But I think it's a good idea to have a skeptical attitude, especially to what the majority opinion is, especially when that opinion is created by the same people who caused the wars and are destroying your countries and who objectively lie to you routinely. What this seems to be is, I'm not here, sort of rah-rahing for conspiracy theories. What I am suggesting is that we use our brains and not allow ourselves to be railroaded into aligning ourselves either with, wholesale support for the government view or with, this chap here. I mean, there is no replacement. Just looking out the window, seeing chemtrails right across the sky, for using your own mind. But people don't want to do that. But he's still challenging to have a conversation with him about his abandoned belief system. It's like it's one thing. It's like, you're either a conspiracy theorist, in which case you embrace everything which comes over the hill, or you're just on the side, you're on the side of the government and the mass media. And let's face it, what the government and mass media say changes quite a lot. You have to be very malleable to believe that. I think sort of like an ongoing healthy skepticism is the right way of going about things, but I don't suppose that that's going to be the takeaway here. Most of the theories seem so preposterous that the process of trying to understand them becomes exhausting. When I strain to follow the logic, he says, don't try to get me to make it make sense because it doesn't. This is why I get so embarrassed about what I believed. You just buy into this ideology and think that that's the way the world works. Well, maybe his problem was that he was just weak-minded to begin with. I don't believe anybody, well, certainly I'm not saying that one should, follow every conspiracy theory. I should think that's even as dangerous as accepting everything the government and the mainstream media says. Again, it's about healthy skepticism. The thing is about having a mind is you're meant to use it. It's not something that just sort of, you just get and think that, you can just pick it up in 6 months' time and be able to start hitting, holes in one. No, it's something you have to use on a daily basis. Obviously, this guy wasn't able to do that. Or maybe he was. Maybe he really did come to this opinion. His reasons for abandoning the quote-unquote truther movement. Truthers believe official accounts of big events are designed to conceal the truth from the public. I take issue with that. I don't think that's what truthers believe. I mean, I don't sort of identify as a quote-unquote truther. My understanding of truther is somebody who is looking for the truth. I mean, isn't that supposed to be what a rational adult does? But then there aren't many rational adults left. Are also hard to slot into a conventional worldview. That's interesting. Lee veers between feeling ashamed and amused by his own convictions while also pointing out that it would be a mistake to dismiss these ideas with impatient eye roll because they are very dangerous. Now, I think we're getting to the point of this. It's not only that you have a right to be delusional or a truth or whatever it is. These are dangerous. And if there's one thing that the kind of libtard orthodoxy requires is that they should never be in any danger. And in order to ensure that that happens, they're going to eradicate any dissenting view, whilst claiming, interestingly, that they are open-minded, liberal, and embracing of diversity. A 2020 poll found that 17% of Americans believed a group of Satan-worshipping elites who run a child sex ring are trying to control our politics and media. Well, I mean, prove it wrong. I mean, look at what's going on around you. It would certainly, as a theory, make a lot more sense, for example, than what we're told, which is that it's just a sort of confluence of incompetence and greed. I will admit that incompetence and greed certainly are features of the system we have today. But if you look at the fact that most of these sort of political prostitutes seem hell-bent on destroying the very countries and peoples they purport to represent, you have to allow for some measure of blackmail or whatever it is in there. And you have to admit also they do have a kind of unerringly repetitive attachment to mass death. Anyway, versions of the same ideas have gained greater currency in the years since he stepped away from them. In the US, the influence of QAnon has shifted from the fringes to the mainstream, and social media has been flooded with the group's misinformation. Misinformation is a great word. I mean, misinformation and conspiracy theory. I would love to have been in the room where they came up with these. These are very powerful kind of antidotes to thought of any kind. A bit like Putin's talking points. That would be another one. That sort of thing. A 2020 Ipsos poll found that 17%, we've already had that. In 2003, Lee was 24, a musician working behind the till in a garage in Peterborough, when he downloaded a series, this is the dangerous moment, he downloaded a series of videos from the internet that offered alternative perspectives on 9/11 and suggested that the terrorist attack on the Twin Towers in September 2001 was self-inflicted by the US government in a way of justifying military action in Afghanistan and Iraq. Well, I think it'd be pretty hard to argue against that. Certainly, it's been able to drive through a whole load more than just that. The Patriot Act, which basically turned America from essentially a fairly laissez-faire republic into essentially a kind of tyranny by fiat, was entirely a function of 9/11. And I mean, if you don't know anything about it and don't know anything about thermite or haven't looked into it in any way, if you can count to 3 and you can see the difference between 2 and 3, there were 2 supposedly planes and 3 buildings in New York went down, well, then you're left with some questions. And what's interesting is that nobody now, none of the few remaining actual journalists, Seymour Hersh or whoever it is, nobody will touch this. Even people who will talk about, the blowing up of the Nord Stream, which clearly was America. I mean, they had motive, means and opportunity. Well, who had motive, means and opportunity in 2001? 19 Arabs who couldn't fly Cessnas? Well, if you believe that, happy you. His starting point was a strong anti-war stance and healthy skepticism about politicians' motivations. But from there, he came to believe that a network of secret societies and cults was running the world. Here we are. We have the January the 6th terrorists, apparently, who went for a wander around the government buildings in Washington. It's hard to summarize precisely why he made that step, and harder still to fathom his later preoccupation with paedophiles and ritual murders. He attempts to explain when we meet on a weekend afternoon in an empty Bristol wine bar, idle waiters keep glancing over, startled by fragments of conversation about satanic lizards, that I have to email him a few days later to ask him to try to explain things. His answer remains confusing, with George W. Bush and Democrat John Kerry's membership when at the Yale University of the Skull and Bones Club, blah, blah, blah. A lot of this is, for somebody like me, I kind of went all through this 20 years ago, whatever it was. But there is no substitute for using your mind. And it's, especially with this sort of thing, you have to ask yourself, who benefits? Generally, who benefits? And for what it's worth, my view is that, leaving aside, any of the views that have been sort of trounced, given a sort of public thrashing just now. I'm not here to defend those views exactly. I know where I stand on it. My advice would be, if you're interested, to research it and come to your own view. But what is important, and I think interesting, is that they don't want you to think about this. The only kind of rational, apparently, response to these criminal events is to have the ability to see no cohesion there at all. And the ability to see that cohesion, it's a bit like anti-Semitism. Exactly, it's the same basic strategy, where any criticism of, in this case, Jews, it can only be something wrong with you. Those are the only terms in which we can discuss it. Not that they could have, there could be a legitimate reason for criticizing them. That's excluded from the narrative. The only way in discussing this problem, the only rational, logical, and decent way of discussing the problem is in something intrinsically wrong with you. And this, and I've noticed that this same mechanism is applied right across modern, tolerant society. It doesn't matter what it is, whether it's Jews, whether it's, whatever it is, it doesn't matter. Mass immigration, blacks, whatever it is. Maybe their positions are totally legitimate. Maybe they are, but you can't discuss them because a priori, any attempt to discuss it exposes an internal, intrinsic fracture, a fault line, something probably quite despicable in the critic. So it never gets as far as actual discussion. And my view is not that Jews are bad or this or that. That's not the question. My question is, why is it that we accept this mechanism and don't attack it? And firstly, and second, who benefits from this mechanism? That's really the question that's interesting to me. Anyway, let's do a little bit more of this. There's probably a lot of it. I don't know if we've got an awful lot of time. They've got covers a bit of David Icke, 7/7 attacks, blah de blah, and they've got some really reasonable people. Naomi Klein, blah blah blah. Here he is. Well, he doesn't look to me. I mean, you shouldn't perhaps judge a book by its cover. Although I would say you should judge a book by its cover. He doesn't look to me as though he's sort of the master of his own mind. Particularly even now. And let's face it, nobody likes a traitor, if you want to put it in those terms. So I'm sure, a lot of the more vociferous parts of the so-called truther group are being pretty nasty to him, which will just kind of confirm him in his position as a sort of, a sort of repentant kind of missionary now in fighting for the school of orthodoxy. His problem, of course, is that orthodoxy changes a lot. He's welcome if he's come to this and he's on the basis of his own mind. Good for him. That'd be my position. But I personally am going to continue to use my mind. It doesn't mean that I embrace every conspiracy theory. It means that I use my own mind. I'll also ask myself why is the deep state rolling out articles like this right now? And just if you want to just put the thing in context, as I say. The organizations and the kind of the machine that's putting this out is also telling you to roll up your arms, telling you 2 years ago, not very long ago, that you couldn't get within 15 feet of granny, that you had to basically make yourself unemployed, and it's now crashing your economies. And so what I would assert is happening is that what this is really doing is kind of agitating for normalcy bias, because as your societies are collapsed as a function of the war in Ukraine, which the West has started and is prosecuting with great enthusiasm, any attempt to discuss that other than in terms of Putin's unprovoked war of aggression is going to land you in the conspiracy theorist camp, which therefore makes you dangerous, which therefore means that you can be shut down, which therefore eventually will mean that you'll be probably, just cancelled, have your money taken away, unable to work, jailed, all the rest of it. this is the way that it works. Am I agitating for, every conspiracy theory? No, of course not. I'm agitating for using your mind. It's difficult, it is, but the alternative is, what we've got now. It's kind of like a kind of Teletubby tyranny. Anyway, that's it. Details of where I upload to, how you can join my Substack and Telegram channel, support my work, and download my books free are in the description. Thanks for listening, and bye for now.